We're joined this morning by Mr. Fawadoki, who is an APC chieftain and the public affairs analyst. Thank you for coming on this morning.
Thanks so much, Chamberlain. Good morning.
Well, a lot's going on in the polity, but first, what is your reading of first of all, these KPIs concerning the ministers? Let's start from there. Much as, yes, people want to see performance, people want to see that the target that the party set for themselves is achieved and then ensure that Nigerians are better for it. But questions about these KPIs that the ministers are going to set for their MDAs, they themselves submit a report to the president. How do you see this playing out?
Let me start by saying this, that we've taken the curve, we've taken the bench towards the development of our nation. We must know that first. And why do I say that? Before now, and I said much earlier, that we still need to ask ourselves what manner of democratic governance we need in Nigeria. We deceive ourselves to say we are in presidential democracy, when in fact we still practice parliamentary politics.
How is that?
Good. You see, most of our so-called leaders and political elites cut their teeth during the parliamentary governance and political days. And that's why you have the shout of fiscal democracy, we want regional democracy, we want this. We need to sit down first to ask ourselves, what do we want? Since 1979, when we've chosen to go the presidential route, have we taken the time to really and seriously understand what it entails?
You don't think we have?
No, we've not. No,
what signs do you see to warrant that conclusion?
Okay, now, let me just move away a little bit about politics. Today in Nigeria, people will say, party is supreme. And you say, this party is supreme. When they go on the path of impunity, party is supreme. When it's not favored, then it doesn't have respect for the party. No. Parliamentary politics talks about an, homogeneous party system. Presidential politics talk about the ordinary citizen, the constituents. The constituents, it's like they will say in business that customer is king. It's the constituents. When you are elected into Congress or the National Assembly or State Assemblies, as we put it here, it is the constituents.
But isn't that what we have?
No, who have given you their sovereignty to hold in trust, and not a few of us in party politicking who will say, I'm your leader, and it is what we feel or what we assume or what we think should be. That, yes, we think for the people and we feel we are in the best position to say what the people want to know.
Let me get this.
Just a minute. In presidential politics, it is about the people. It's about your constituency. Because in 4 years, you go back to show your scorecard. Now, we now situate that with the KPI thing. It means that seriously, we're ready to run governance, again, using the word, in the best practical way possible.
Sorry, do we have the foundation for that? If you take you back...
You must start from somewhere. We are starting.
I get
now
your point,
we're
but
laying the foundation.
When you speak about the way it is in political parties,
yes,
how people are certain things to themselves, and now at this federal level, we now want to practice the way it should be to the people. Number one is that in political parties, what stake what financial stake do members have? Is it the
Very
big
well.
guns that form the parties that
for the
call the
same
shots?
reason that I've been in court with the party over 1 year now. The question is, do we have political parties or political associations? Today in Nigeria, we have political associations, not parties.
What's the difference?
The difference is this. In political associations, you also want to understand the basic tenets of democracy, which is about the haves and the have-nots. Unfortunately, the haves constitute minority in terms of number, yet majority in terms of taking decision. In political parties, it's like you are in a social club. You must be financial. I remember as young as I was when we started politics, we, as a matter of right, on a monthly basis, contribute certain amounts for the running of the party. We issue membership card, we issue membership certificates. And you know what? Today, because we have political associations, some people just don't want members of their parties to be financial so they can have their ways and they have the say.
If at the federal level,
yes,
we now have this KPIs given,
yes,
and with a view to doing the right things,
yeah,
assuming, without considering that's going to happen, if one or if they don't meet up with the KPIs, are the minister going to resign? Or what happens?
You know the way it's done in presidential politics? You ask for his resignation.
So we expect that to be in this case.
It will happen. I tell people, ministers or political appointees are announced on the radio and they are sacked on the television. You just see breaking news. Fuad Oke has been dismissed as Director General, Lagos State Safety Commission. No. In developed climes and saner environments, just have your resignation. This is your scorecard. You've not measured up.
First, let me ask this. Do you think the ministers had, before now, everything they needed to succeed as ministers?
I think so. Except for one fundamental ingredient. And that ingredient is their sponsoring. Before now, you have people in appointive offices, again, via our constitution, being sponsored by the political parties, but in reality, it's the sponsorship from, again, the haves. And I think what we have seen in 2019, it's a little departure from that. I think we have ministers today who will not hold or own their position to somebody somewhere, as we've had time past. So with that, I expect that this set of ministers, number one, will have what I call the peace of mind. Number two, they will not have somebody breathing down their neck. Their loyalty and commitment will be towards the chair. And that's the man who appointed them.
Now, at the moment, if these KPIs are given to them, how should they be judged? Should they be made public? Shouldn't the public have a right to know what standards
That
have
is
been
where
measured?
listen, the president has done well for us. The president has said, this is the KPI. Tell me what you need. I will give you what you need for you to make a success of your assignments. Now we have a contract, and this is the contract. The president will not be able to do that if you, Chamberlain, stop from interrogating on a daily basis what our representatives, either elected or appointed, do. What are the expectations? What do we want from them? I was in the aircraft last night, and 2 flights were joined together by APC. And we were told, except business class, every other seat, it's free. Choose a seat. And the young man stood up to say, "No, this is my seat. I'm in 5A, I think, just behind us. And I'm not sitting anywhere. This is my seat. This is what I paid for because you allocated this seat. And I don't care what you say. I want my seat." And that's the way we should go.
Because he has a right to do that.
That's the way we should go.
Well, just yesterday, one of our guests said that he doesn't envy the minister because of what the two of them, actually, that we had yesterday called subtle contestations between ministry officials and the minister.
It's about understanding.
Okay.
In local Lagos parlance, we have this saying, and actually it is my saying. When Lagosians say, "Oh, it's our right, you must have this, you must have that," and I tell them that you're making a mistake. That what we call government, the executive arm, is also broken into 2. You have government, you have bureaucracy. And you must understand it. For any appointed officer, now public officer, to succeed in his assignments, he must understand how the bureaucracy works. And the way bureaucracy works is not the way the organized private sector works, where you look at your balance sheet and all you see in your balance sheet is numbers. No. In government, your balance sheet must look at the projects, the programs, how they were implemented, the buy-off, the signing by citizens. People say bureaucracy is slow. Naturally, it should be. You know why? There's no room to make mistake. You're dealing with human beings and not numbers. Therefore, for any appointed officer in government, the first thing you want to learn is how the bureaucracy works, understanding what I call the culture of bureaucracy, which is the basic tenet for any administration to succeed.
But how then do you explain the change when there is a change of guards, or when there is a kind of a change in the reporting line? For instance, in the case of the VP now, where some agencies under him now have his office has to take.
It's so funny and worrisome the way Nigerians, and particularly Chamberlain and others, have interpreted the last 2 days. The event, yes, you yourself. Chamberlain, every morning, Chamberlain, you know the first 3 hours of my daybreak, it's always with
What's my crime? Tell us.
A lot of us make mistakes without interrogating deeply to understand how a system works. Office of the Vice President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. Go back and look at the Constitution. What are the functions of that office? Talking about the event of the last 48, 72 hours thereabouts, not too many of us look at what the functions statutory of that officer. The important one is that that office, as a member and chair of the Economic Council, it's very clear. If hitherto the President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, in his wisdom 4 years ago, feels, okay, we have a council which is an enlarged body. let us have a small, implementation team. And we call it the economic management team, right?
That was then.
Yes. Okay. And again, in his wisdom, hearkening to cries of experts, that the president should play more active role in the economy and therefore have an advisory council comprising experts. The operating word here is advisory. The operating word in the Economic Council is management. And you also want to ask yourself, Economic Advisory Council are expected to sit down, look at the macroeconomic state, look at fiscal policy issues, monetary policy issues, and advise the president. On receiving their advice, the next thing you want, or most likely will see, is the president again sending him to the Economic Council to look at it, to distill, those advices and see what will be used for implementation. It's very clear.
But the other perspective is this. Now, there are those who ask that, look, yes, he's got this team, but this team, it's not the implementation team.
Yes.
They will just advise.
Advise!
So, of what import will that advice be if those who are going to implement don't have the dexterity to implement as advice?
You see, what we have hitherto, again, it's a situation where we have a composition of membership of the management team by way of ministers in line ministries, essentially. Not getting a robust, if I may use the word robust, support and advice from our experts. What the president, in my opinion, has done basically now is to say, okay, fine. Whatever we do the last 5 years, it's like, oh, you're not getting it right. Oh, and the Chamberlain will bring all sorts of experts to postulate, how things should go. And the man is saying, okay, fine, what we'll do this time around is this. We'll also get them play more active role in advising on how better, to put policy, economic policy decisions and, start its implementation. So what we're going to do is this. We will get these experts to look at issues, distill them, advise us on how, to go about it. So we'll give it to the next, a set of individuals, which comprises the state executives, governors, as well as ministers of line ministries, including the central bank, to take another look at a more robust, policy framework issues from experts and make good use of it.
All right. We've since been joined by Victor Giwa, who is of his National Coordinator Advocate for People's Rights. Thank you for coming on this morning. We're taking a look at circumstances or events surrounding the Vice President. Mr. Oki thinks, look, this is how government works. Look at all of those things. Nothing wrong in getting an advisory council because they're there to provide this advice. But in terms of interpretation, how people perceive this, how do you perceive it?
Well, the fact is that constitutionally, the Vice President has certain role he plays, under the Constitution, especially some statutory role. For example, he's supposed to be the chairman of the National Economic Council. He's supposed to chair National Economic Council. He's supposed to be a member of Nigeria National Defense Council and the National Security Council. He's supposed to be also under Section 148 of the Constitution. He's supposed to have ensured the word used by the Constitution is that he shall have, regular meeting with the president in terms of looking at policy decision and ensuring that they maintain the various essential provisions of the Constitution. And I think that Well, it is the president's discretion under Section 1482 to also assign certain jobs to the vice president. However, if you look at the development, you will see that the vice president has always been sharing the activities of the economy. He has always been the lead, in terms of managing, taking some decisions and policies, just as the chair of the National Economic Council. But whether or not the new team as constituted by the president is with the consent, so to speak, the approval or the agreement with the vice president, that will be where you will ask the issue of.
But you know that I'm not sure consent will apply, because if the president, whatever the VP does is perhaps as directed by the president. If the president says, okay, well, if the office says, look, seek approval for some of those agencies, and isn't it within the law?
Yes, seek approval from, yes, if that is for agencies that needs the president approval. However, you must also understand that Section 5, that has to do with the power of the executive, says that the executive power is vested in the president and may be exercised by the vice president or its ministers.
Unilaterally or as directed by the president?
No, that section did not say as directed. It says...
No, but you can't have two captains in ship.
No, he's not having a captain, but it means that, because if you talk about the president, and he said his power can be exercised, what it means is that the president has some level of leeway. You should understand that the vice president is to work with the president.
Mr. Key wants to come in before I go to Lagos. Go ahead, please.
You recall I said before, Mr. Giwa, when we got into the studio, that this is the only country where you have, experts in all facets of life. I use the word postulating things. And
he's a lawyer, so maybe he's giving his legal perspective.
Yeah, but even at that, you see, a lot of us, and it's easy for lawyers to come and tell you section this, section that, forgetting one thing. The basic and simple interpretation of words. The chief executive of Federal Republic of Nigeria Limited is President Muhammadu Buhari, and the principal. And any and every other person in that government complements, because it is President Buhari that Nigerians will look at his scorecard.
But in politics, they say it's a joint ticket.
No.
But some people would also argue that, look, hey, if the vice president is over the National Economic Council, shouldn't this Economic Advisory Council...
Can you put 2 before your 1? In arithmetic, can you?
Well, I'm not very good at
arithmetic.
No,
let's start at numbers. 0. No, start 0.
No, you are the guest.
So 0. No, you start 0. 0, 1, 2,
So 3. What's the 2?
So it's 1. The president. Listen.
But in the Constitution, it's National Economic Council.
Listen.
Okay.
It says, and he's a liar, it says, and if I'm right, I think it's Schedule 3, the 3rd schedule, Part 1. It says the vice president, it's a member and shall be the chairman of the Economic Council.
Shall?
Yes, shall. That's the operating word. Shall. But before then, it states that the president is the chief executive officer. Abi? Of Nigerian PLC. Okay? Therefore, the important thing we need to look at and we need to give support for, it's not to see a Nigeria again ever in 2003 to 2007 years, where we have the president and his vice not being able to work harmoniously together. Today, what we enjoy in Nigeria is this, and we must give all support and not create problems where there are none.
All right, we'll have to let it go at that point. We thank you both, Ms. Afo, the key APC chieftain and the public affairs analyst, as well as Victor Giwa, a legal practitioner and a national coordinator, Advocates for People's Rights. Thank you again for coming.
My pleasure always, and thanks for having me again, Chamberlain.
Thank you.